In a year that's been full of parity, we haven't seen many drivers dominate a race the way Kyle Larson dominated today. And that's not to say other drivers didn't have their chances. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Tonight, we're talking all things Homestead Miami Speedway. Coming into today's race, only Joey Logano had punched his ticket into the championship finale at Phoenix. Chastain, Elliott, Hamlin looking to defend their slim points cushions. Byron, Blaney, Briscoe, and Bell trying to make something happen. We're going to talk all about the playoffs. We'll look at the updated standings, discuss what went well, what went wrong for some of our contenders. We'll also put this race on the groovy gauge. We'll discuss some of the more controversial moments in this race. But before we get to all that, we have to start with Kyle Larson. Let's just get this out of the way. Kyle Larson led 199 out of 267 laps today. If this was 2021, if this was last season, I wouldn't have blinked twice. Kyle Larson won 10 times last year. He frequently dominated races, even races that he didn't end up winning. Kyle Larson and leading laps just went together like peanut butter and jelly last year. This year, it's been a little tougher sledding. Today was his third win of the season, but we've talked about his other two wins. At Auto Club earlier this year, he had a really good car, but he had to throw a late block on his teammate Chase Elliott to secure the win. At Watkins Glen earlier this summer, again, Chase Elliott seemed to be in position to win. Larson on the final restart had to run him up wide a little bit, rough him up a tad. This race, Larson just dominated. Start to finish. Nobody had anything for the 5. He easily drove out to a 9-second lead before the end of stage 1. He only lost the lead in stage 3 because Ryan Blaney missed a shift coming off pit road, spun out, brought out a caution before Larson had pit, so he had to restart behind people who had just pit. Had to restart like third. I think that was the only time in this race Kyle Larson lost the lead. He was dominant today, no doubt about it. Would you believe this is his first career win at Homestead Miami Speedway? Kyle Larson, known for ripping the top, running the wall. Homestead Miami Speedway, that's the fastest way around. He had a few top 5s. He had at least 1 or 2 runner-up finishes here in his career back when he drove for Chip Ganassi, but shockingly, no wins. So kind of the same story with Noah Gregson in the Xfinity race. Always so fast, so close to winning here. Finally broke through this weekend. Same goes for Kyle Larson. And both did it really in dominating fashion. This also locks the 5 car, the Hendrick Motorsports 5 car, into the Owners' Championship fight at Phoenix. Kyle Larson, the driver, not eligible to win the Drivers' Championship like he got last year, but his car and team owner still in the running, and that is what pays the best at the end of the season. So that 5 team, Kyle Larson still plenty motivated to run well, to prepare for Phoenix, and to go for the win in 2 weeks. I mentioned how Larson's other 2 wins this year have featured at least a little bit of controversy. Today's race wasn't completely controversy-free either. I'm talking about what happened on pit road with roughly 20 laps remaining. Martin Truex Jr., who was the leader, thanks largely to that timely Ryan Blaney caution, spun off the front bumper of Larson's car, entering his pit stall. Crew members scrambling. Thankfully, nobody was hit, nobody was injured. The result was a 30-plus second pit stop that forced Truex to restart back around 20th. It is extraordinarily rare that we see contact on pit road like this. Typically, when there's contact on pit road, it's because someone is exiting their pit stall as someone else is coming in and they meet in the middle and there's the contact. Rarely do guys run into each other and wreck each other just lined up entering their pit stalls, but that's what happened in this case. Kyle Larson didn't believe he was at fault. TV, I think, did a really good job breaking down how late Martin Truex Jr. appeared to get on the brakes and turn left. It seemed pretty obvious to me that Martin Truex Jr. didn't see his pit sign until it was almost too late. He had to make a last-second adjustment to the left. Typically, you don't turn out of that right lane. You kind of move into that middle lane and then turn into your stall. But because Truex, likely blinded by the sun, didn't see his stall until the last moment, he was forced to turn from the right lane. Larson wasn't expecting it. You cannot put that on Kyle Larson. It was on Martin Truex Jr. When Martin Truex Jr. said after the race that both he and Larson shared in the blame for that, translation, Martin Truex Jr. knows it was his fault. It's a sucky way to lose a race. Now, I'm not sure he holds off Kyle Larson on that restart. Larson didn't seem to have quite the same dominant speed on the short runs, but I think Larson wins that race regardless. But for Martin Truex Jr., who missed the playoffs this season, who is still winless 34 races in, it's got to feel like the whole world is out to get you at this point. How many other ways can you possibly lose a NASCAR Cup Series race? I feel bad for him because it was just a fluky minor mistake that cost him a shot at the victory, but it was on Martin Truex Jr. I will not blame Kyle Larson one bit for that contact. Call me a Larson homer all y'all want, but I think the facts in this case are pretty clear. MTJ did put on a show those final 15 or so laps, driving from 20th up to 6th. No team orders here. He rocketed around his teammate Denny Hamlin there with just a couple laps to go. Very impressive comeback. I know 6th place to this team in the grand scheme of things means almost nothing. A win makes all the difference. But still, credit to Truex for not just throwing in the towel. He went out there and raced those final 15 or so laps and put on a heck of a show. Let's talk about some of these other top finishers. Finishing second behind Kyle Larson was Ross Chastain, the best finishing playoff driver. Ross Chastain and AJ Allmendinger had a fantastic battle going for second place those closing laps, trading the position back and forth. Allmendinger had great short run speed in that Chevrolet all race long. He slowly creeped into the top 10, top 5 late, and with a couple cautions coming out towards the end, Truex's issue, suddenly he was in contention for the win. I was kind of waiting for them to settle things amongst themselves because for a few laps I thought Allmendinger or Chastain, take your pick, might have had something for Kyle Larson. But by the time the two of them stopped racing wheel to wheel, Larson had extended his lead to over a second and he was gone the final handful of laps. But they put on a heck of a show. Congrats to both of them, honestly. Chastain getting some important points. He's not locked into the championship the way Joey Logano is, but he is in the best points position of those remaining. We'll look at those in a second. And AJ Allmendinger, I know he's not racing for points in Cup this year, but he will be next year. I told y'all a few weeks ago, next season, the NASCAR Cup Series is going to see the best version of AJ Allmendinger they've ever seen. I think Colleague is a team on the rise. I'm not going to predict championship 4, but playoff driver? Playoff team? Yeah, that's certainly attainable. Who else? Look at Austin Dillon and Brad Keselowski. This top 5 is full of surprises, you know, after Kyle Larson. I know we had a late race restart, but no, Dillon and Keselowski were legitimate top 10, borderline top 5 cars for most of this race, so they earned those positions. Round of applause to both of them. Finishing 6th, I mentioned Martin Truex Jr. Denny Hamlin in 7th, the next highest playoff driver behind Chastain in 2nd, so a pretty big gap there. Denny Hamlin entered this race with a very slim points cushion. He was +6 over William Byron for the final transfer spot. Yes, Denny Hamlin was the second best finishing playoff driver, but William Byron outscored him in stage points 17-1. Denny Hamlin was off in stage 1. They didn't quite have it figured out in stage 2. He did sneak in and grab the final stage point there. He's lucky William Byron faded towards the end. We'll talk about Byron in a moment because otherwise Byron was set to leapfrog Hamlin and gap him in a big, big way considering all the stage points Willie B collected. Christopher Bell finishes 11th. Arguably the most disappointing playoff performer today. Was fast yesterday on Saturday, qualified 2nd, qualified on the front row. I thought, hey, this is a great shot to get some playoff points. He came into this race -23. People are talking about must win. I wasn't there yet, especially when I saw he'd qualified on the front row. I said, hey, he goes out and gets 7 or 8 points in this first stage, depending on how other guys do, he could eat into that 23-point deficit pretty quick. Unfortunately, he dropped like a rock in the opening stage. Didn't collect any stage points in stage 1, didn't collect any in stage 2, couldn't even muster a top 10 at the end. Honestly, very disappointing. Again, we'll look at the points in a moment, but now Bell is in a must-win scenario, going into Martinsville, a track that he might do great at, but I don't know, I don't think of as being a Christopher Bell playground. William Byron finishes 12th. Where do I begin? The last time we raced at Homestead over a year ago, early in 2021, William Byron got the win. Byron began these playoffs red hot with a bunch of top 10s, leading a bunch of laps, but the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think he'd led 1 lap total the past 3 weeks, no top 10s. I looked at Homestead as being a great opportunity for Byron to regain that momentum to once again emerge as a legit championship 4 threat, and for the first 2 stages today, he did just that, finished 2nd and 3rd, collected, like I mentioned a moment ago, 17 stage points to lead all playoff drivers. Great stuff, awesome stuff, and then stage 3 began, and they faded. It was alarming looking at the point standings, as they run and seeing his cushion that he had built up over Denny Hamlin for that final transfer spot shrinking lap after lap after lap. He rallied late, picked up a few spots, finished 12th to limit the damage. Overall, this was a good points day for William Byron, but it could have been a whole lot better. What happened in stage 3? I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but there are just a lot of interesting stories regarding playoff drivers today. Like Chase Elliott ends up 14th. 8 races into the playoffs now, 2 top 10s, a 1st and a 2nd at Talladega and Bristol. Chase Elliott does not look like a championship contender anymore. I know he got stuck back in traffic. He was caught off sequence when the Ryan Blaney spin brought out a caution. He had been top 5, top 10 pretty much all day before then, but 14th, when it's all said and done. He did collect 8 stage points. Not a bad day for Chase Elliott. He was just the 3rd best Hendrick car. And he has used up most of his regular season championship playoff points when we look at the standings in a moment. Let's go ahead and look at the point standings as I talk about these final couple of drivers. Ryan Blaney, now minus 18 despite earning the 2nd most stage points out of any playoff driver today. 2nd straight week that Ryan Blaney derailed a potential top 5 finish with a spin. Last week, car just snapped loose on him when he was battling, I think for 2nd, maybe 3rd, hit the outside wall, then hit the inside wall. Bad finish. And then today, exiting pit road, based on the onboard camera replay, sounds like he might have missed a shift as he was exiting pit road. Very slick apron there, access road, spun out, brought out the caution. He ends up finishing 17th. Not a total disaster, but as you can see, he lost points to the cut line today despite doing pretty well in the first 2 stages. You can't spin out twice all by yourself and expect to move on to the championship 4, not this late in the playoffs. A win at Martinsville, all your problems, all your past troubles go away. But he has now put himself in a very difficult situation as a result of mistakes the last 2 weeks. You can blame the car at Las Vegas, being twitchy, being too loose all day, having like a vibration, sure. But today's mistake, just all on the driver. We've seen other drivers make mistakes with that new shifter this year, but you can't make that mistake this late in the season and expect to easily move on to the championship. So I mentioned that Christopher Bell, probably my most disappointing playoff performer today. Ryan Blaney, just because of all the points he left on the table, a close 2nd. And then 3rd, I know he's at the very bottom, but I have to manage expectations here a little bit. Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe is the only playoff driver today to not finish the race. Briscoe had managed to finish inside the top 10 4 straight races, including last week at Vegas, where, much like today, he was running outside the top 20 early, fell a lap down. Last week, he rallied to a top 5 finish. This week, he hit the wall, broke everything underneath the car midway through this race, and went to the garage, did not finish. Just a bad performance all around. Team obviously didn't give him a great car. He ran 20th, qualified like 16th, or I think he qualified 20th. No, Chastain qualified 20th. Where did Briscoe qualify? I'm looking around like I have a producer. I just need to check my notes. 19th, close enough. Didn't have a good car yesterday, didn't have a good car today. They kept talking about how good they were during the test earlier this season at Homestead. I didn't see any of that today. He wrecks, now they're way behind in the points. They gotta win at Martinsville, and it's not gonna happen. I'm calling it now. I'm not 100% sure about a lot of things. Chase Briscoe's not winning next weekend. I think you can write him off. I can't wait for y'all to bookmark this if he does, in fact, win next week somehow, some way, against all the odds in the universe. Those are your standings after Homestead Miami. Just one more race until the championship 4 field is set. That battle between Byron and Hamlin, potentially for the last spot. And, Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain, they have a little bit of a cushion, but it's not the most comfortable cushion. That's going to be fascinating next week. I don't think anyone has high expectations for Martinsville after what we saw there earlier this year in the spring, but hopefully the points battle at least keeps things somewhat interesting for all of us watching at home and those of you in the grandstands. Speaking of what we saw today at home and in the grandstands, let's put today's Dixie Vodka 400, I think they're the title sponsor, right? Let's put today's Homestead Miami Speedway race on the groovy gauge. Kyle Larson afterwards called this a butt kicking, and as butt kicking races go, this one was more interesting and more engaging than most. Yeah, he had a 10-second lead at a couple different points in this race, but when it came down to some late race cautions, some late race restarts, Larson didn't have the best short run car. He was just fortunate enough to have some track position there, the final restart. So there was still an element of mystery. Could Ross Chastain or H.A. Allmendinger sneak up there and pull off the upset? A lot of great racing from second place on back. Like at one point, I noted that Larson had a 9-second lead over second, but that second place had like a 9-second lead over like 12th place. So there's a lot of action going on here in the middle. Some of it TV caught, some of it they didn't. Overall, I still was very entertained by today's race. I'm going to give it a 75% on the groovy gauge. I think a lot of the uninteresting parts of this race can just be chalked up to Kyle Larson being dominant and driving away and the lead never really being in question. We did have a couple of crashes. John Hunter Nemechek spun out, hit the inside wall. He was running inside the top 5 today, filling in for Bubba Wallace until that incident. I don't know where he finished. It wasn't good. I don't think the car was 100% after that little bit of contact with the inside wall. Tyler Reddick had a spin and hit the inside wall pretty hard. Unfortunately, he hit the part that kind of juts out, part of the access road so emergency vehicles can get onto the racetrack. Really unfortunate angle. Hope he's okay. That was a pretty firm impact. It's worth noting that the drivers were shifting multiple times per lap, I think all day long, throughout the entire run. We've always seen that at road courses, but this year we've mainly seen that at shorter ovals like Martinsville, Richmond, I know. I can't remember, did they shift at Darlington? Did they shift at Texas in turns 1 and 2? There might have been a couple of bigger intermediate tracks that they shifted at. I can't remember off the top of my head. I probably should have looked this up before I started recording. But I do still believe it's uncommon for drivers, even with this new car, to be shifting constantly at 1.5 miles. Did that affect the quality of racing at times today? I'm not sure. It still felt like we saw a lot of side-by-side racing, some good solid passing. Drivers just got spread out pretty easily. Some of that can be chalked up to high tire wear, handling playing a major role. It was fun to see drivers by themselves, hanging it out and touching the wall. I thought that was entertaining even when there wasn't actual wheel-to-wheel passing going on. It's one of the things I love about Darlington. It can be tough to pass at Darlington, but you know that just getting around that place at speed demands a ton of focus, a ton of reaction and reflexes from the drivers, and you can see it. You can see the cars kind of bottoming out, getting loose, tapping the outside wall. You can see it even when they're not 3 wide. I love that about Darlington, and in many ways I love that about today's race at Homestead Miami Speedway. We did get plenty of 2 and 3 wide action at points though today, so this is a good race, 75% in my book. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I believe that's gonna do it. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any upcoming videos. We talk racing almost every single day here on this YouTube channel. And as always, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. Really appreciate your very generous support. Got a lot of exciting things in the works. We're doing Groovy Hollow once again, an iRacing event for charity. We'll be doing that this Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. It'll be live. Also have another very exciting announcement that you guys will see here in just a couple of days, maybe a few days. Don't want to put an exact date on it. Got to move some things around and finalize some pieces, but boy, I cannot wait to share this news with y'all. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again very, very soon. Have a great rest of your weekend.